What do CEOs need to know about sales these days? A lot. Outdated sales strategies and tactics plague most companies today. Listen to what innovative CEOs and experts have to say about how to change all that with Sales Talk for CEOs. Welcome to Sales Talk for CEOs. Today, I have the great pleasure of talking to a CEO who has been a friend of mine for 30 years. 9 companies later, having sold 6 and spectacularly failed with 2, he is co-founder and running a company called Prospect Desk, which is really interesting because they have done some amazing things in a very short time that we're going to talk about. But one of those is Prospect Desk has over 1 billion resolutions for their customers. Now, I'm going to have my friend Jim Weldon tell you more about that. Welcome to the show, Jim.
It's great to be here.
All right. So lots going on in your life to get you to where you were, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But first, tell the audience the short story of what Prospect Desk AI does and who you sell it to.
Sure. We the folks we sell to are mostly platform companies. So if you think of a CRM company like a HubSpot, somebody of that size, or somebody in the marketing automation space, we power their platforms. And the easiest way to explain what we do is if you think of Stripe, the credit card processing company that really transformed how e-commerce works, they put a snippet of code on your website and you get a little box. And when you want to purchase something, you click the box and magically your credit card gets processed and everything's good. That's actually not the power of what they do. What they do is, as I shared earlier, is that one line of code unlocks an entire financial ecosystem of capabilities. We do the same thing. Companies have lots of visitors on their website. We stick a line of code, and there's 30 companies that do identity resolution. The problem is that's where they stop, but that's where we start. We unlock an entire suite of capabilities on the back end where we can take that resolution and enrich it. We can score it. We can turn it into a display advertising for retargeting. We can build your social audiences. So think of that suite of capabilities. Now you only have one partner to deal with instead of 5 or 6 to replicate what we do. And the net of it is we're trying to help companies fill the top of their funnel from their existing digital spend and traffic. So because we're all struggling with cost per lead and cost of acquisition of customer. So if you can solve that in business, you have a chance to turn it to become profitable. So that's what we do in a nutshell at Prospect Desk.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody right now is trying to figure out how to drive inbound and how to get more leads, right? And they're doing it in some really old-fashioned, outdated ways that are not working anymore. So I think this is even more important now. As you know, CEOs, we're all looking for how do we do this and how do we do it right? So we'll get back to that in a minute, but I'm going to take you back. In fact, I'm going to take you way back to even before we first met. And I just want you to do the short story of each of these companies because each one of them got you, a step closer to where you are now, but you also did something very interesting in every company. You and I've talked about this before. You used leverage, right, to get each company to excel quickly and get to the revenue numbers that they needed to. So I want you to talk a little bit about all the successes, but certainly some of the failures too. And then, we'll bring you back up to starting Prospect Desk and how you got that company to grow so quickly in the beginning as well. All right. So first company that you co-founded. Tell us about that one.
Yeah. So as I shared, that it was the inspiration in '91 out of a company that I was a cog, as you called it. And I watched the CEO explain to the investors, they lost all their money. And so out of desperation, I was asked to go up and meet with a company called Ortex out of Seattle. And there was 1991. It was the dawn of the electronic filing industry for personal tax returns. So they were the largest independent H&R Block network of providers outside of a company in Oklahoma. And Harold Orr was the owner, and they built a software. They wanted somebody to come sign up tax offices to help collect and process tax returns. So it was a company that took an individual tax return. We focused on the Hispanic market. And because, of course I should focus on that market. I didn't speak Spanish. I'm not Hispanic. So great place to go. Um, we didn't know any better. We were young and dumb. And what was cool about it was that company set us on a path and used the word leverage. We didn't know why we were successful. We took it from 0 to 60 million in 3 years. And we used to do something every year that we'd sit down with a green book. We just happened to buy a little notebook from Staples, and my brothers and I would sit down and we'd say, okay, what's working on the left-hand side with the business? What's not? And we came up with these 3 questions, which was, who has our customer? Who will give us access to that customer? And by how they give access, do they give an implied endorsement? So we were working through tax preparers to get to the taxpayer. We didn't have the money to advertise direct to the consumer. So it was B2B to C in current terminology. We didn't know what that meant back then. And what we figured out is by signing up these tax offices, and it was a data tech play. We didn't know that at the time either. We had no idea what we were entering. And my whole career has been around data and technology to enable it. We just had this giant data entry shop, and we didn't realize we were the monkeys putting all the tax returns in and then electronically filing them. Well, we transformed an entire industry as we were part of it. It was us, H&R Block, and a third big national tax company. But what that led us into was we've said, hey, before we ever enter an industry, there's also one other thing we learned. How do we use our competitors' biggest strength against them to accelerate the adoption of our company in the target? So I'll explain what that means. And it sets up the rest of our companies. So H&R Block had a 50-year head start on us in preparing tax returns. They are the godfather. Well, what we figured out is all of the people we were signing up were tax preparers. So we had an idea one day, and we said, what if we put 100% guarantee out there? And we learned this from reading Jay Abraham's Blue Book, who he had no idea he was inspiring us. We paid $500 for an 8.5 by 11, 500-page book. And it was like all the money we had for learning marketing. And one of the things is what do you do that nobody else does exclusively? And we just did electronic tax filing. So what we did is we sent out a direct mail piece that says, is H&R Block going to direct mail your clients when the season's over and you're going to lose half your business? Question, right? So H&R Block sends us a nasty letter and calls us and threatens us and says, you can't say that. I'm like, hey, it's a question. We didn't make a statement of fact. And here's what we did is we, in 100% in writing, said we will never prepare a tax return ever. Get H&R Block to give you the same letter. In 2 years, H&R Block and UPS were our competitors. We put them out of the electronic filing business. So we wound up becoming the largest courier company in California overnight for tax offices. And we were the largest in the state of California to process tax returns. So 2 big lessons: leverage on who has my customer, the tax office. How will they give me access? Then gives an applied endorsement. Put that aside. Then how do we turn our competitors' biggest strength into their biggest weakness? We use that kind of metaphoric model to go into every industry we've been in. So when we had identified in our business plan, the stroke of the pen was the biggest risk. So of course we were right, unfortunately, and the IRS or Congress decided they wanted to get rid of users' interest rates on these refund anticipation loans. So overnight they had to make these things credit-based, and it wiped out 90% of the approvals. And oh shit, our business went from 300 people to 50 people in one day. But we had made money. We're fine. Don't cry for us. So what we did for the next business is we went into the student information system business, because boy, if you haven't really had enough fun working with the government, go work with education, because there's so much.
Oh my gosh.
So we went in and identified that we wanted to work with public schools because they're simple. That was a mess. We gave and bought our way into LA Unified School District, and we realized that the single greatest determinant in the success of a student is the involvement of the parent, period, full stop. Doesn't matter how much you spend per student. Doesn't matter how fancy the school is. It doesn't matter where you are. That's why you see these great programs on TV of teachers inspiring. So
Right.
you would say something?
Having been a school teacher for 13 years before I went into business with my dad at Miller Heiman, I can tell you that that's 100% right.
Yeah. And people, and it's not a hard thing. It was basic things like, do they have homework? Did they turn it in? If they didn't do well, where can we help them study? Simple stuff. So the student information system turned into an interactive voice on IVR system. Remember the old days where you used to push buttons to get things to respond? Parents could
Yep.
put in their student's ID number, and then it would tell them the homework that was due with voice segments. This is like 1999, 2000 stuff. And we used a dialogic little board in a computer. And we got Narbonne High School as our first one in a really tough area down in Torrance, which is funny to say, but it was a pretty bad neighborhood. And they loved us because the participation of parents, a lot of single family homes or single parent homes. And then what we saw was student performance go up, and we're like, we're on to something. The problem was it's a nightmare to deal with public schools. So we took that
Right.
capability with the student information systems, and we said, how can we change it for private schools? And what we found was private schools have a problem with payments. So we went to lighthouse schools like Mater Dei in Southern California, and we're Catholic. So we went in and said, hey, we're going to give you a deal. If you host an event for us, for the other Catholic schools, we'll give you the system for free if at least 2 sign up the first year. And being good Catholics, they can't pass up a deal. So they hosted and never told the other schools they were getting a deal.
Oh my goodness.
So they gave
Leverage. Love it.
they gave us an implied endorsement because they were hosting the event.
Right.
Everybody
Right.
assumed they had bought. They hadn't. So what we did was we changed how we went and sold. Nobody had sold in these aggregated demonstrations. They did one by one in the market. And then there was a financial model issue. Biggest strength that we had was we got a finance company to change the payments. It is end of the month, 9 months of payments, because they don't have money in the summer private schools. They
Right.
have no cash.
Right.
It's not like public schools where they get their funding for the whole year and we're good for 12 months. So anyways, we changed the business model, and we were able to literally take that company from nothing to 10 million in sales in 24 months. And that was, another one of those ones that we wind up selling to Symbol Technologies in their education division. And then we go through the companies, and then we had Max Displays was one I forgot that, because we decided we didn't have enough.
Displays when I met you.
Yeah, we figured we didn't have enough torture. So think of how brilliant we were. We go from IRS to education to hardware sales and technology. Christmas, we were trying to torture ourselves. But here's what we learned. We learned a couple of things. One is dealing with a sophisticated company like Dell. Our friend ran peripherals, and she built it to $1 billion for Mike Dell from $10 million. And the key to that is it's a hunting ground for new products for Dell corporate. So you'd bring in your idea, you'd sell it in the peripherals. So think of multiple monitors. That was our space, Max Displays. Well, we learned a hard lesson is that when Mike Dell gets involved and he wants to sell Merrill Lynch, we went from 0 to 10 million in that company in 18 months. I was going to say at 21, but it was about 18 months. And we learned you don't mess with the founder of a tech company like that, because God, he will do an unnatural deal to win a deal. And we learned we had HP as distributor. We had CDW. We had Tech Data. We had Ingram, all the big boys. And what we learned is it's a race to the bottom on hardware. We didn't know. We had not a clue because the internet wasn't really mature then. We weren't doing research. There was no business models floating around. All we know is they're successful. Yeah, because their model is rigged for them, not for us. So then we're like, never going to do hardware again. Not going to do education, IRS. So we're learning what not to do. So then what we did is we started getting into SaaS and software companies. And I wish we were smart enough to take credit, but here's what we came up with for the last 10 years, which is if the company generates a lot of data, it's called data exhaust, and we can leverage AI, back then it was machine learning, to improve sales or operational efficiency, we want in. So what I gave you on those first 2 companies was about 20 years. The last 10 years has been very intentional, which is that was our thesis. We had no idea how to apply it. And then, so I've invested in about 9 or 10 companies in that space. We've liquidated and sold a few to PE. One went, a couple of them got acquired by other folks. Simple ethos that turned out to be really spot on. But we never got away from our roots, which is how do we go ahead and build these companies from the ground up? So anyways, leverage. If you don't know how to apply it, you don't know how to borrow it, you don't know how to gain it, don't go into business. You're not prepared, because here's what leverage you don't want to have to go after. raising capital. It's
Right.
least repeatable. It's the hardest thing to do. It's a rigged insider's game, and you're no longer working for yourself.
Right. And
So,
you're taking all of your attention away from building your company to raising funds. And so there's it and if you don't, your company is in distress while you're doing it. So it's like it's a no-win, right? It's a really hard game.
well, here, let's just
And
talk to the talk to the numbers. 1 in 100 companies get funded. So there's 99 that either don't get funded, or so you have to have another way. So we wrote, and one of the accelerators I was a part of and helped is 20 ways to fund your company that doesn't involve a VC. And I'm amazed at how non-creative most founders are. Well, I can't get coders. BS. Talk somebody into coding it. That's your first job. The number one job of a CEO of a startup is to talk people into doing stuff that they wouldn't
right.
normally do. Period.
Exactly.
And if I can't get you to code at night on the weekends, you're not passionate about this. So I have to go raise 5 million so I can talk you into taking 150 grand and a salary reduction. No, that's not how great companies are built. Great companies are built because it's a shared purpose and mission. You're solving a real customer problem. And the only sustainable way to grow your company and fund it is sales, period, full stop. And what I tell
Love
people
it.
is, if people won't pay you, this is why I always admired you in your career, is people pay you for your expertise. I don't care what you build or a part of. They will bring you in to share what you've learned because you're an expert. So the key is, do you know enough about the industry you're going to build your company in to get paid to share your knowledge? If you don't, you're not an expert. Move on. And that's why I
Yeah.
tell young people, it's super hard at 23, 24 years old to form a meaningful company. And we get the siren song where we're pulled in by Inc. magazine and Success magazine, and we see the outliers. What we don't see is the pile of carnage and ruined Stanford grads that come out, think they're going to do the next Instagram and sell it for $1 billion with 6 employees. Give me a break.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, so many more failures than successes, but we read about these successes and things that should be us. I tell young people today, go work for somebody who's doing what you want to do or something like that and soak it all in and learn as much as you can and learn that industry and learn that business and then go out on your own or end up doing something with the person that you learned from. But to start out, right out of school, it is just so hard. And yes, you should do it and fail and then go get a job. That's fine too. But I think they don't realize because we glamorize everything. Drives me absolutely crazy. All right. So Jim, right before you started Prospect Desk, you had a company that you sold and it was based on data and really cool and interesting. I was involved, talking to you about that a lot. And I think that went really, really well. And then you not only managed to sell it, be able to still use some of the technology that you brought into Prospect Desk. So let's talk about what that looked like. You got that sold and you did a great job, obviously negotiating it. And what was it that made you think, okay, the next thing I'm going to do is Prospect Desk? Because again, like you said, okay, first 20 years, lots of different things, learned what not to do. But then you went data. That's the thing I'm going to do. I know it. I love it. I get it.
So let me roll back a second. First of all, you were involved and my son got that company sold and you were an advisor, and I want to give you credit and kudos. And there was a number of introductions that led to that. One of them was the precursor to his company called Flow Engine. You actually
Flow,
helped.
and yes, I remember I was mentoring him then. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentored him and he wound up, thanks to an introduction, getting that sold. And that led to the Data Cooperative. The Data Cooperative that he founded, 5x5, was sort of like Fight Club. Nobody talked about it. First rule of Fight Club, don't talk about it. And what
Right.
we found is because of the model we had, which was people contributing their data, there was a lot of fear around PII, personally identifying information
Yes.
being contributed. And we had to learn over time, there's a really smart way to be compliant. And we got there. So my son led that exit. I was very fortunate. It was one of our best investments ever. And our fund and single family office at AZ Crown was super stoked to be a part of it. I mean, my co-founder built Insight Enterprises. That's a public company, number 320 on the Fortune 500. So when we make those claims, that's a really, really proud one as a dad. And that's what's great about, having friends like you who can come in and just give their expertise, and I don't have to worry. And he'll listen to you because, you're Miller Heiman. You're
I'm not his parent.
yeah, you're the famous Alice, you're Alice Heiman. You're from Miller Heiman. And he was brought up in understanding all that world. So a couple things on the data side. One is data is the new oil was that article that came out in The Economist. And I'm a knucklehead. I fall for all this stuff in business. So I'm looking for the next trend. We're not as smart as we think. We're reusing trends. But I knew from the tax business that the data people wanted, and this was why we got into the dialogic boards, is we provided something nobody else did in the service bureau business. And in the Hispanic market, think about it. We're doing tens of thousands of returns a week. And every one of those clients was going into the tax office going, where's my check? Where's my check? Where's my check? So what we did is we printed little business cards with the phone number in Spanish that basically said, check on your tax return status. The average person would check 13 times in 2 days.
Wow.
We got these things out in 48 hours, but you thought we had stretched it out 4 months, 13 times. So what we did is we're like, holy crap. So then what we learned was the phone volumes in the tax offices went down and they were stoked. Nobody else had this. So it was one of those like little things that allowed us, hey, are you tired of people calling? So that was my first, like in the background, we didn't know data was important, but we kind of learned it was. Student information systems and what we did for the parent, nobody had ever thought about taking homework segments and voice recording them and stitching them together. And it was really wonky. Hi, your son is in biology 104. They have no homework today. Like we literally stitched together. It was
Yeah.
no natural language processing, no voice synthesizing. It was as arcane as you can imagine, but incredibly effective. Why? Because what does every parent say to their child? Hey, how was school today? Yeah, fine. You have any homework? Nah. What do you mean? What do you mean no? You're in high school. You have 6 classes. Yeah, I don't have any. Hold on. Oh, it says you have this, this, and this. Hey, you mind showing me? I may not be able to understand it, but hey, show me your homework because I know what to ask for. That fundamentally changed kids. They hate us. And then there's a school that usurped me, pissed me off, that got Apple to invest called Power School. They wound up being the runaway and we sold it to somebody else. But long story short, data's the new oil. I don't know what the hell that meant. But what we figured out is we wanted to leverage all of the companies we touched in data. And we started thinking about it and we built something called a data management platform at Trovo. And that became the partner company to my son's deal. So they had the contributing partners, they had sales, we had technology processing. And one of the things that came out of it was, hey, this is a pretty valuable feed. And we think there's something we could do with it. And to be quite honest, we had not a clue, not a flipping clue of how we were going to leverage it. We just know we wanted a license to it. So that's what we got. And then we started looking at the resolution business, identity resolution. And then very quickly after the Clearbit HubSpot acquisition went, oh, shoot, this is a race to the bottom. We're in trouble. So we got to pivot. So we pivoted the company to power and not to AI wash our company, but we have been very carefully looking at agentic flows. So if you think of large language models that are going on, large action models is where the industry is going to go probably for the next 24 months, which by the way is going to be 3 life cycles of AI, maybe 4 in that same period. So Moore's law used to be every 2 years it doubled, 18 months to 2 years.
Yeah.
It's every 6 to 9 months now in AI. So that could be 4 cycles. So
it's exhausting. I mean, yes.
Actually, you know what's funny is because we're very clear on what we want to do, it was exhausting at first trying to keep track of all the companies. Now we don't. What we did is we came up with a very simple model to explain what we do, but I don't want to jump into that because that's a really long answer to get to. We figured out data is going to be super important. It's the new oil. If it's the new oil, what part of the value chain? Are you going to be a gas station where it's processed? Are you going to be the refinery that holds it? Are you going to be the trucking company in between? Are you going to be the exploration company that goes and finds the wells? Where do you, because you can't do them all. So we figured out we want to be on the refinery end with 5x5 and discovering it. That's his part of the value chain. And then what we wanted to do was we wanted to be the distribution trucking company that went partnered with the gas stations. So we've always used that model to reflect where we were in the value chain. And we're very intentional about what we do and where we stay, because I do not want to deal with brands. I don't want to deal with end customers. We don't have the expertise. But what we're really good at is we power these platforms in a way that they can afford within their business model at scale that they can't touch with their other options in the market. So long-winded answer of saying, shit, we've been lucky. We've been in the right place at the right time. So.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. Yeah. So Prospect Desk is selling to these more tech type companies and tech type companies and
Yes.
giving this platform, and then they can resell to their end users. So like you said, you're not involved in the end users, but you're supplying something that those end users really need through this channel. And I really think that channel sales is a very important model today, and not enough companies are taking advantage of it. I love the way that you've got, it's just full circle, right? You've got the data in 5x5, get it cleaned up and ready to be able to be used, be able to push it to the next, to these platforms. And then the end users get what they want, which is identity resolution and so much more, understanding
Yes.
who their customers are, understanding where they are, what their behaviors are, how often they're doing certain behaviors that would trigger sales, right? And instead of spamming the world through email and LinkedIn and cold calls, we're actually meeting customers where they are through Prospect Desk.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So it's where the behavior and intent meets the opportunity. So what we focused on in the sales funnel is top of funnel MQLs, market qualified leads. And if you think about any website, 98% of the people never ever disclose who they are that visit your website, and 2% takes some sort of declarative action. Those are really
Right.
the MQLs. What we do is we help identify another 30 or 35% of those visitors. Then you could do some cool stuff. Like if Alice has been doing some marketing, hey, can I compare the people who came and visited to my UTM data, the tracking code on an ad? Is it the right audience? Or my organic, I'm doing a podcast with you and your audience. Are the people who come to the website people I want to do business with? And if it's not, we're not the right podcast. If it is, it's like, oh, I want to get back on and be a guest again, which I obviously would love to someday. And to me, what I learned is the attribution is so poor of what
Mm.
actually generated that visit or behavioral interaction. That's the big challenge in top of funnel is marketing is really not armed properly to get to the right answers. Some companies have stitched it together and done a good job, but that's not most middle market. That's not most SME, and it's certainly not SMB. So we partner with companies that focus on those industries to provide them the tools. And the way we explain it is we're providing water and electricity, and you either have the substation to power their home or you have the water treatment plant to put the water to their house, but they have no idea we exist. So we love that because I have 12 customers to talk to. You know how chill my phones are and email and
Right, right.
let's be honest, it's Slack. All of our customers just want to talk to us in Slack, and if they have a question, they'll do a Zoom call.
Great.
I try to visit everybody once a year, and they're like, "Yeah, if you want." And it's so different doing business now because when the water works or the electricity power is there, you don't talk to your utility company. We're a utility company on the data, insights, and resolutions to unlock that whole ecosystem of capabilities. And our biggest problem is educating what we can do. No one believes we do that many things. So we're unveiling it step by step with our
Yeah.
partners because too much too soon, you overwhelm.
Absolutely. And that's, I mean, we've been friends a long time. We've talked about sales so many times. And I'm always saying lead with something that will get their attention, right? And then you can grow from there because people do get confused and buyers today are overwhelmed, right?
Absolutely.
So we cannot add to that overwhelm. We've got to make it simple for them and make it easy for them to make a decision to buy, right? And I think this is where a lot of companies are just missing it completely, right? Yeah, don't overwhelm your buyer. That's why they end up in no decision. They're overwhelmed and they can't manage it. So your approach is exactly right, of course, because we lead with something they get it, they know it'll work, and then it's like now let's
Yeah,
expand that and
we're
give you even more capability.
I totally agree. And it's the old axioms. I mean, people tried to explain to me the internet's different. I'm like, no, it's not. It's an accelerated way to piss away money. That's all it is. The fundamentals of product position, price haven't changed. All that's
No,
changed is the speed at which we can
that's
spend
right.
money on Google AdWords or Facebook and get no results. But to your point, we made it so that we earn our way into every deal is the way we start every conversation. We give you the service for free. We don't want you to take a single chance, a little bit of opportunity cost. It's 5 minutes to stick our code inside a Google Tag Manager, and we're in business. We need a location to send the resolutions. And I go, that's the first step. If you do not react at 2 weeks and go, wow, I love this, then we don't go any further. If you understand how to leverage our data, then we want to do something. And by the way, only about half the people go forward because they don't know how to leverage the data. They don't get the ha. They go, oh, that data is inaccurate. We're like, hold on. There's 12 or 15, 20 columns. 3 are not there. We don't care. And they're like, well, I have to care. No, you don't. Let me show you how to use it. So now you're in this contentious thing. So what we've had to learn is we qualify people and say, hey, do you do retargeting? Yeah, we do. Oh, that's going to be a good one. Hey, do you guys do lookalike audience? Yes, we do. Hey, do you pay Facebook for their audiences to market to? What if I can eliminate that? Yes, we do. Hey, do you work with an agency that overcharges you on your DSP and your retargeting? Well, I don't know. Hey, we're going to give you transparency on what it costs. So that's the way we've learned how to unveil what we do. We used to cross swords and fight them on how smart we were. And I don't know why we did it. We couldn't help ourselves. No matter how long you've been doing this, you make the mistakes over and over, and you correct them quickly and go, no, that's not how to sell. It's get back, ask questions, figure out the true need, and then give it to them for free to try. Because people, free trial stuff is, man, we're addicted now as internet users. If we can't try it before I buy it,
Oh my gosh, people, they want to try
buy it. I'm not going to, even an enterprise. So that means integration costs need to be low, timelines need to be short.
Yeah.
It can't be an IT project. I don't care. I mean, I'm blown away by how easy it is to use so many of these tools. Look at the companies we're dealing with. OpenAI, we're dealing with Claude, we're dealing with Anthropic at Claude. I mean, these are massively multi-billion-dollar funded behemoths, and every single one of them makes it easy to try their thing. Well, that's everybody.
100%.
Yeah, and they're sophisticated. Go ahead.
Just for a couple of minutes before we have to wrap up here, let's just talk about when you first founded Prospect AI and how you grew the sales, because you are doing founder-led sales. And I think this is important. I talk about this on a lot of my shows. It's interesting to me that many founders have gone back. They moved away from founder-led sales, right? And they moved back to it. And it's, for many reasons, most of them good reasons, right? But I mean, there is a time when you want to scale and you're going to need salespeople, et cetera. Got it, of course. But I think that we sometimes overlook founder-led sales. And I just want you to explain a little bit about how when you got started, and of course, you're the one in your company with a lot of this, you've done sales for years. How did you get the first sales and how did you grow? Because you grew exponentially in a very short period of time.
Yeah. I think you and I have very similar philosophies. You don't go out and hire a sales team. You don't put a bunch of SDRs in play. You don't spend a bunch of marketing when you're starting your company. And if you don't have any funding, boy, definitely don't do those things. So one of the things I learned is we didn't have the great technical co-founder. We're always searching, but we were always the front end sales leaders. And what we learned was we're in the matching business, not the selling business. So when we took that mindset, it made it easier for us to go out and engage customers because we listened a lot. We said, hey, what are you doing? Like, what's annoying you? Like, oh, what's your biggest pain point? People don't know. I always go, what's annoying you?
They don't.
They really don't, because they're dealing with calls and HR and covering payroll and I don't care what size you are, everybody deals with these legal issue, whatever. So I say, what's a big pain in the butt? What's annoying you? And everybody always has something that annoys them. So as a founder, I can go in and I just say, hey, listen, we just want to figure out if we're solving the right problem. We'd love to have you guys use this. That's the giant sales pitch. Welcome to the sales training school. Listen, ask what's annoying. Did I guess? Am I solving it right? If not, I'm going to pivot it very quickly. Then I'm going to give it to you, and it's got to be easy to try. So what we talk about is how do you get to that pilot phase of no charge fast and set them up for the buy, which is hey, Alice, if this works like we want and I get the reaction I'm hoping for, I'm going to give you a 50% discount on this thing, and I'm going to give you preferential payment terms, but here's what I need. You need to introduce me to 2 or 3 of your friends you have for this deal. And then I shut up. So I've already set up the next 2 sales and introductions. Of course, they're going to listen to me because it's Alice. So I got a free, by the way, the single most important thing in sales is to compress the trust cycle, not the buying cycle. You can't force people to change their buying cycle, but boy, I can compress the time to build trust, and I'm going to borrow your equity and trust. So as a founder, that's the first thing I look at for leverage is I wouldn't ask my friend to make the intro unless I was confident we could deliver, or I'd say, hey, Alice, here's where we're at. who do you think we should talk to that can deal with us at this stage? You're like, all right, don't call these people. They're a pain, but boy, these people know how to deal with a company at your stage. So that's the first thing as a founder. The second thing is, why would I go out and start hiring people when I don't have a single standard operating procedure, nothing. I don't have materials. I don't have scripts. I don't have a target list. I have nothing. All I have is my Rolodex. And founders can sell differently that have been around the sales game than a rep. They need
100%. This is a thing that I want CEOs to hear, right? Founder CEOs, doesn't matter whether you're a startup or 20 years in, you will always sell differently than your reps. Plus, you have a title that gets you in the door. So why would you think otherwise? Oh my gosh, drives me crazy.
Here, how about this line? Well, I sold it. It can't be that hard. You can sell it. I think that's the
Right.
stupidest
Heard
line.
it a million times. So stupid.
I want to choke the CEO. And then what I found is they're not process driven. So what we do is we start trying to document the process, and we realize the buyer journey we put people on is a disaster. So we call it marble through the pipe, and it's got a bunch of kinks. You cannot optimize a system you haven't realized. So how did we do it? I just started calling my friends and saying, hey, I'm looking for companies that do this. And we got one. And then I had one in our portfolio. I'm like, hey, can we talk to you guys? And here's the way I approached it. I said, listen, we're going to do all the work. We're going to give you 70% of the revenue. What? Because if we do rev share, people think you get 30 like a channel and we keep 70 as the company. No. So like, hold it. So you're going to give us most of the money and you're going to build the product and you're going to be our back end and tier 2 support and we don't have to code anything. Huh. I go, yeah, we're going to be an innovation cycle for you to get you a rev to products to innovative recurring revenue approach super fast. I sold it off of recurring revenue, no upfront investment. That was my sales pitch to the CEOs. They're like, well, that seems kind of simple, but I go, let's start with you. And by the way, as our partner, we'll never charge you as our partner. You always get it for free. And if you don't want to use it and you don't want to get it for free, I don't want to work with you.
Right. Because if you don't get how you use it to attract customers, how are you going to sell it to your own customers?
Right. It's the old Larry Ellison eat your dog food, right? When he changed and got rid of all the extra products that they did at Oracle that they weren't using. Like Oracle HR was so bad. Well, you remember those days. Nobody used it. They were using PeopleSoft. And he's like, I hate them. Exactly. They were his competitor and his ex-executives. And they're like, and people had authority and they put this in and he lost his mind. So he went back and standardized and said, well, our products, if they're not good enough, make them good enough. And they did. So as founder-led sales, a couple things come to mind. One is we don't sell like everybody else, but here's what we do is we are the first fearless people to go and take the hill as the Marines. There's no army, there's no air cover, there's no special forces. Body count is high. Lots of failures, lots of no's, lots of doesn't work. And if I'm not willing to trade my personal equity in the market to get a deal done, why would I ask a sales rep to go take that same beating?
Right.
With way less skills. So what I figured out is how do I get it from 0 to $1 million fast? So I have to have pricing that is so ridiculous that it incentivizes them to want to do business with it. So that's why we did the rev share. But then I always tell people, hey, there's a minimum for a few months until we get this thing ramped up. And so I talked half a dozen companies into giving us a monthly minimum because I'm like, we still need to put people in processing. And I had the ability to maneuver that. Next thing you know, we're like $500,000 in a blink before we even really are developing the service. So I talked to 6 companies and I hope they don't see this and they know they got talked into it, but they all know they got talked into it. But they've all built 7-figure businesses off of what we provide. So we're still less than a year. So the second piece is then we start going, how do we make it easier to fill the funnel? Because the hardest thing is you run out of the friends deals and the family deals and calling Alice to make introductions. So how do you turn this thing into a business? And that's the point where most founders fall and fall down. So they think, hey, I got a little momentum. Let me raise some money. Then I'll put a marketing machine and I'll get some inside sales or I'll get more digital conversions or I'll hire a field sales team, whatever the strategy is. And what I found is they still don't really know what problem they're really solving. And they don't have their unit economics nailed down. They don't really know their back-end processing costs. The things are disasters. So what I found was keep the team tight and small. Let's make the genesis, the people that are providing the service. I wrapper everything else with one helper. I have one helper, and it's usually somebody young and smart that I can get cost effectively. And then what happens is we keep the costs way down, and I have a specific number I'll invest to get to the next proof point. Next proof point, break $1 million. Why? $83,333 a month. That puts me in the top 10% of all SaaS companies every time I get there.
Right.
Then when you get to 5 million, you get in the top 2%. You get to 10 million, you're in the top 1% of SaaS companies. So those are my numbers. And in between 1 and 3, we start to hire a person like we just did with Prospect Desk, and you helped us find somebody. And then what that does, it's a forcing function. It's like, hey, can I get some of the functions and activities off my back and translate them to this person who doesn't know anything? And if we can't,
Right.
we're probably too early. So then how do you nurture that person? Do you keep them on board? You struggle with the next evolution and out of the becoming the butterfly, right? How do you get the cocoon piece going? And what we found is that's the hardest piece, is that 1 to 3 million. Then it's like 3 to 5, you get a little better. 5 and up's easier, especially if you don't have a board that's institutional investors, because now we're making strategic investments that we want.
Right.
Trying to get
Exactly. Not them pressuring you to do more land grabbing and, crazy stunts to have some ridiculous, unsustainable exponential growth.
Yes. And nobody realizes that, because what they do is everybody hates the pressure of the cash flow. And that's the thing, that if you cannot have a steady hand and psychologically handle that, don't be a CEO. It's the
Right.
single, because here's the thing that this, especially being in so many companies and advising, the pressure on a CEO to cover cash is absolutely staggering.
Oh my gosh.
It's caused a lot of drink-filled nights, a lot of relationship angst, a lot of bad parenting because you're short-tempered. I'm just speaking from my experience. You lose it. So if you don't have that calmness to be able to navigate through, don't be a CEO of an early stage company.
Right.
Go get a job at IBM and go get trained to be a field sales, whatever. Because it takes a special person to handle that stress. And most people don't come out of it okay. And that nobody talks about that. I mean, we looked at the companies we had that blew up, and we thought we knew it all, and they blew up right underneath us because, holy smokes, we were too arrogant. And that's the other thing. Your past successes don't guarantee a success in a new thing. So as was it Gordon Moore who said only the paranoid survive at Intel? We believe that. And I'm super paranoid where we're at right now. And that's why we pivoted the company again. And that's the other thing too, you and I know. You get 1, maybe 2 pivots at an institutional company, then you get fired.
Right.
We pivoted, Nick, not the ethos of the companies. We pivoted 3 or 4 times what we were doing. And like we said, if we were outside investors, we would have fired ourselves 2 pivots ago. But guess what? We survived the pivot. So anyways, founder-led sales to me, I think, is everybody keeps telling us that you got to get away from it. The reality is you can't until you're about 3 million. Then you can start hiring a person. And we did it with Nick. We hired a producing director of sales, not a director of sales to come run and build a team and then marketing. And we said, hey, if you can't self-source the next 2 to 3 million, don't take the job. And that's what we did. I mean, and the people we hired, and you know them well. Steve over there, fantastic. Yep. He was a machine, a 7-figure out of the gate. First 2 quarters were like, this is, and it's a special cat that takes over that role. It's not somebody who was at IBM and built some giant division with a bunch of helpers. So anyways, I could go for 3 hours on founder-led sales.
I know. We're at the end of our time. So, oh my gosh. Well, I am really looking forward to continuing to watch Prospect Desk grow and pivot, because I know there's a lot more to come, and it's pretty darn exciting. So I'm looking forward to that. And just before we go, I have 3 questions I'd like you to answer. I always ask my CEOs to share with others. They're easy. The first one is, what's a book that you think every CEO should read?
It's changed over time. The first one was Grit and Mindset, Carol Dweck. I think those are.
Oh yes, both of those are great.
Yeah, I've met both authors, and especially her. She's amazing at Stanford. I would say it's changed, and I would say it's agentic artificial intelligence. Somebody you and I both know, Dr. Tom Davenport. He wrote Competing on Analytics, a seminal book on data-driven decision-making 15, 20 years ago. He's now one of the 7 co-authors of this book. It's dense, but if you do not know the stuff in this book, you will not be competing in the new world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I need to get on that because I haven't started reading it yet. So I will definitely do that. All right. What's a podcast you listen to because it makes you think differently?
Anything where I I do two of them. One of them is anything Bill Gates will go on and speak on. Believe it or not, but a lot of people think he's Darth Vader and this the Death Starship. He's thinking about something I've been really concerned about, which is what the heck happens when we displace all of these white collar workers. He doesn't see an end, which means as a consumer driven economy, one of our biggest power bases is going to be gone.
Yeah.
So anything Bill gets on that he talked about. The other one is anything Eric Schmidt. So I follow people more than the podcast. And what happens is the podcasters pull different views out of them. So I just listened to a Sam Altman talk, actually their CRO from OpenAI, Chief Revenue Officer. And they blew me away. And that's what led me to this book, which was, hey, we're going to put smart agents out that we're going to charge you $2,000 to $20,000 a month to run for you. And I'm like, what the, that's genius. So it literally changed our playbook approach. So I focus more on people for podcasts and the topics they're talking about. So I'm like a groupie. It's like if you're a Deadhead fan, you follow wherever they're going to play. Because what it does is I found that you get 6 or 7 of those thought leaders and they're on really good podcasts. The interviewers, like you do with CEO Sales Talk, you pull out of them their thoughts and they're not really repetitive. They don't have like a shtick they've memorized, like they're doing a corporate, road show. They give real thoughtful answers and it makes you read. Like Eric Schmidt from Google, the former CEO, that dude's smart. And you listen to him, or here's one. I follow Sergey quite a bit because I'm so impressed he came back. And here's what reason he came back to help at Google. A friend of his at a party, he was at with Sam Altman, of course, everybody, smart guys hanging. He goes, dude, what are you doing? He goes, what do you mean? He goes, the greatest change in history is happening right now. And you're a computer scientist and you're sitting on the sideline. And I'm sitting there going, I need to be more relevant. I need to get my act together if Sergey's being called out. Holy smokes. So you listen to Sergey talk, you listen, and do I get in a little bit of an echo chamber? Okay, so you're sitting there with some of the smartest people that have ever walked the earth that are thinking about really big problems. To me, that's a different way to look at how to track podcasts.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I have not heard that before, but I think it's a great idea. And it's funny because I never thought of it that way, but there are a few people who, no matter what podcast they're on, I always want to go hear what they had to say. So I think that is a really great way to look at it. All right. Last question. What does every CEO need to know to win in this market?
Wow. Where you start, the old axiom is not where you're going to wind up. And there's an old phrase, you and I have heard this a lot, right? Which is fail fast. I'm amazed at how much confirmation bias still impedes CEO decision-making. And in this market, we had to change how we develop our products. Yeah. And 2 seconds, we had to break apart the ideation and alpha team, which I'm a part of, on building our solutions, from our beta and innovation team. And ideation and innovation are completely different. Most people don't know the difference. And then we had to then have, how do we productionalize and operationalize what we built? Those are 3 different teams at my company. One person overlaps them both. We have handoff points. So to me, it was, you can say fail fast, but what is the business model to be able to innovate quickly? That's another way to say it. I am amazed at how slow people innovate. And that's the fulcrum between ideation and operationalizing to revenue. So to me, failing fast, but having a meta model, because I'm a huge Charlie Munger fan. I love that guy. I've read just about everything he's ever written at Berkshire Hathaway. Really sad he passed. But to me, I didn't realize I thought in meta models. So as a CEO, what is your meta model on how you approach business, go to market, innovation? Most people, and that, by the way, another way of saying, how do I apply leverage? So it makes me more attuned to how I make my decisions because I have a model. So my wife laughs because she goes, you have a freaking model for everything. I go, pretty much. So I have
my goodness.
They're heuristic hacks, right? You and I would call it a heuristic hack. It's a shortcut on how we get to something smart.
But it's the foundation, right? So you can fail fast when you have a foundation, when you have a model, right? And you can look at it, ask yourself the hard questions, figure it out and move on, right? Otherwise, it just doesn't happen. And you're right. We see too many CEOs who are not, and they're not, innovating, they're not pivoting. And that's a little bit scary. The market's going to change a lot in a very short period of time, and it's going to be very interesting to watch. Oh my gosh. Anyway, thank
I
you
agree.
so much, Jim. Thank you for being my friend for 30 plus
Likewise.
years. Thank you
Likewise.
for all the great conversations we've ever had. And we've had some really good ones over the years. And thanks for coming on the show today to share with all the CEOs and all those who support CEOs. You've shared a lot of great ideas, and I really appreciate it.
It's always good to see your smiley face, and I'm always impressed with all the people you help. So thank you. Glad to be on.
If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.